Hello everyone, this is Jason from STEM Nerds. Thanks for being here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how we classify living things and how we classify systems. Hope you enjoy the video. All right, so we're going to start out with how we classify living systems. We can start out with atoms, just things like oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and carbon. And you can combine those things together into molecules like carbon dioxide, ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, sulfate, and you can combine all those things together and you can get what's not shown here are macromolecules like carbs, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. And then once you have those macromolecules, macro means large, you can begin to form living things. The cell is the fundamental unit of life. And we're going to talk about different types of cells here in a second, but you've got the cell that has genetic material and some enzymes inside, and cells are capable of replication. You can combine cells together into tissues. You can combine tissues together into organs and organs into organ systems, and pretty soon you've got a multicellular organism, things like cats and dogs and elephants and people. And then once you have a group of those individual organisms, you form a population. And so a population is a group of similar organisms. And so we can talk about a population of elephants or a population of wild dogs or hyenas. And that population is usually not going to be self-contained. It's usually going to be part of a larger community. And that community might consist of lots of different types of species of organisms. And so you might have elephants that are in the same community as hyenas and wild dogs, and you've got all the trees and all the other wildlife. And all of that can be combined into an ecosystem. And when you have an ecosystem, you're including everything. You're including the natural elements, the rain, the weather, the trees, the landscape, the streams, topography, and all the living things inside. And then you get to the biosphere, which is pretty much our Earth. And so that's how we classify living systems. Then you've got the basic classification of organisms, of which there are three domains. You've got bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. The bacteria and the archaea, we're going to talk about more of that in a future video, but the bacteria and archaea are what is known as prokaryotic organisms. They lack membrane-bound organelles, they lack a nucleus, they tend to be very, very small. And so you've got the bacteria and archaea, and then you've got the eukarya, and we belong to the eukarya. These can be single or multicellular organisms. They have a true nucleus, that's what the word means. And they have membrane-bound organelles. The individual cells tend to be larger. And then in the eukarya side of things, you've got the main kingdoms. And now, these classification systems, they're changing as time goes on, as scientists try to do a better job of classifying organisms, because it's not easy to do. When we classify organisms, we're trying to organize life into ways that make sense for us. Life doesn't always cooperate as easily, but when you get to the eukarya, there are four general kingdoms. You've got the animals, of which human beings are a part of. You've got plants, which are all photosynthetic. You've got the fungi, which are decomposers. They excrete enzymes that will allow them to digest their material extracellularly. And then you've got the protists, which I like to say the protists are pretty much eukaryotic organisms that don't fit nicely into the other three groups. So if we drill down a little deeper, let's just go ahead and take one of the domains as an example. We have the hierarchy of classification, and what taxonomists do is they look at living things and they try to organize them in ways that make sense for us human beings. And so we'll start at the top with the domain, and we already mentioned eukarya is one of the domains. We belong to this particular domain, and it is the broadest of all classification systems. And so you have the domains in eukarya that would include everything from single-celled eukaryotic organisms all the way to people and pretty much all eukaryotes in between. And from there, we can drill down a little bit further, and we can talk about the kingdom Animalia. We talked about the four kingdoms already, but in this particular example, if we want to go down a little bit further, we've got Animalia, and they all share characteristics as well. You could go down even further to the phylum, and every time you're going down, you're narrowing the classification, you're narrowing the number of organisms. So by the time we get to the chordata, you're removing all of the organisms that have, let's say, an exoskeleton. That's why the shrimp is no longer there. And then you've got class Mammalia. And so now you're dealing with organisms, among other things, that are going to be able to feed their young with milk. And so the birds at that point are gone. And then we go to class. Then we've got order, family, genus, and finally we wind up with species. And a species is an interesting concept because it's really not conceptually all that easy to understand, but a species is a group of organisms that when found in nature together will mate and leave behind offspring that look similar to themselves. Species gets a little bit muddy because we are also aware that sometimes we have these hybrid zones, and hybrids are when two species are capable of finding each other in nature and mating, and they produce an offspring that kind of have intermediate features. And so our species, a group of organisms that when found in nature will mate and leave behind offspring that look similar to themselves. So like I said, we are going to drill a little bit deeper down when it comes to the different domains and what it means to be a prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell in a future video. As always, thank you so much for being here. If you want to see those future videos, check out those videos in the upper and lower right-hand side. Have a great week, everyone.